Hello folks, it's your friend Bernie here. Thanks for tuning in for today's Coworking Values Podcast, the podcast of choice for high-performance, independent, community-minded co-working space owners all around the world. So today's episode is co-created with Rayon, and there's a connection here between this episode and the event we're doing at the Workspace Design Show in London. So we used Rayon which is, if you use Miro or Canva or Milanote or apps like that, it's like those. So you have one online collaborative space, and with Rayon you can design your room layout for your co-working or your co-living space or any architectural project. And we used Rayon to represent how we're going to arrange the room. And that's specific to this podcast because a lot of that was inspired by Peter Block, who's our guest today, about how you arrange the room. So very often at events, we automatically design a room layout which looks like a lecture hall. And as Julia says in the blog post we put in the show notes, it immediately gets people into this kind of like boring switch off lecture hall kind of mentality, where at London co-working assembly events, and indeed, you know, all the European co-working assembly events we do, we endeavor to arrange the room in an amphitheater, better connected way. So both the audience and the panel members feel connected and part of the same conversation. And we'll link to this in the show notes. Is Rayon helped us represent that and our intention for the event before the event by Sam from Silent Gliss sent over a floor plan, really quickly uploaded it to Rayon, and then we arranged the chairs. And there's a cool little GIF you can see in the show notes and a blog post that explains that further. And thank you to everyone who contributed to the blog post. So without further ado, on with the show. Hello, folks, and welcome to this week's episode of the Coworking Values Podcast, the sweetest smelling co-working podcast in the world. And in my luxury studio today, I have Peter Block. And Peter, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
I type and I talk. All right. I write books, and I say yes when I get strange invitations like this one. And my work has been to kind of translate from different places into things I care about, which are community and the well-being, citizens taking control of their own well-being. And
is that what you'd like to be known for? Citizens taking control of their own well-being?
I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds good. I want to like, you know, anchor you into a co-working conversation here, because there's all the books you're known for, which we'll put in the show notes. And if there's anything you want us to link to in the show notes, we can. But that community word is everywhere in the co-working universe. And also there's this sense of a co-working community inside the building, and then there's the impact of those people on that local area. And I'm going to sort of set this up a little bit. In London, everyone used to rush to the middle of London and go to co-working spaces. And then when COVID happened, the outskirts of London have never seen more co-working spaces open. And this may, and I'm not the only one that thinks this, there's a lot of people that have been on this podcast that have this mindset of like, oh my goodness, we're not all going to the middle of town. We can get those communities back in the neighborhoods. And, you know, if I'm a co-working operator, owner, community manager, you know, what would you like me to be thinking about as I attempt to activate my business and my local area? That's a very long question, sorry.
Well, the 15-minute city is an expression of that. But what I would say is that there's no difference between activating your community and activating your business. And to me, the co-working space is a convening possibility. And I would wish you would view it as a place to convene people in the community, the neighborhood, within walking distance, within reach, as a place they come to pursue whatever they're interested in, not just funding, not just business, and they don't have to inhabit it. And there's other buildings that serve the same function, that It could be convening places. The museum serves that function. It's a public space that could view itself. Let's bring people together, not about art or history or paleontology, but bring them together about what they care about. And what they care about is pretty predictable. They care about raising kids. They care about safety. They care about their livelihood. They care about their health. They care about social and economic equity. And so your building, where you are, is co-working could be a means for people coming together in ways they don't now. We don't know how to bring people together. I'd like to be known as somebody who gave methodology to what to do and how to occupy a room. We get people together, but then we don't know what to do with them. We put them line them up in seats and let them face forward and have a panel. And so I think there's enormous potential to say, well, let's join as conveners, along with the library, along with the museum, along with co-working spaces, and get people in here where they come to pursue what they're interested in. And what you know how to do is how to bring them together.
And how do you get people to talk to each other? Because I went to, so the space thing you touched on there is, I'm known for being like ever so slightly neurotic about how a room is fulfilled. I like push all the chairs to the middle.
Yes. Yes. Me too. I'm a space cadet.
I'm going to use that forever now. I already know the answer to this. Where is the most weird place you've ever rearranged a room?
The most weird is the city council.
Yep.
Of the city of Cincinnati. All right. It's designed for alienation. The counselors, the elected official council members, are on a platform behind huge wooden desks with TVs in front of them, a microphone next to them. They can't see each other. They can't see. And so every room I'm in that I have any influence over, I say, let's rearrange this room. And people fight it all the time. You can't do that. The fire marshal doesn't like it. You need a lane to get out of this room. And I used to do it with 1,000 people in the room. I'd say, thank you. I'd be a keynote speaker, and I'd say, thank you. If you came here to be motivated and inspired, you're going to be disappointed. Okay, I came here to help you find each other, not to. And then I say, okay, you've got 3 minutes. Would you please rearrange this room to align with why you came? Now, some people came to listen, but 800 of those people broke into groups of 3 and 4. And so, the room it declares an intention. So now, for the last 20 years, they say, would you give a talk? This is when I used to show up. I say, sure, but you got to arrange the room a certain way. Put them in circles of 6. Well, we can't. Yes, you can. And they do. And then sometimes I get there and they say, oh, we couldn't. We got a video. We're shooting you on a camera. And we can't rearrange the room. We're having lunch here. We can't rearrange the room. And then one time, the guy, after they said they couldn't, the cameraman came up. He says, Peter, if you want the room rearranged, I can do it. And so to me, rearranging the room is a metaphor for rearranging how you and I find each other. And then the next thing is that what's the conversation? Because most places when we bring people together, they're having conversations that don't take them anywhere. They're filled with opinions, points of view, panels. And so our job as conveners is to say, well, here you are. Now, here are the questions. I know if you answer these questions, you're going to get connected to each other in a way you never imagined or thought possible.
So I do this too, like obediently show up to, like, I just don't go to things anymore, even though I like the people in the room and I like the people organizing them, because I just have this, allergic reaction to 1,000 people. I mean, I'm showing this in my hands. They're like, in a huge block. It feels like a, political rally in a stadium or something like that. And there's this thing I have about, which I picked up from, work like yours, about this mass one-to-many power dynamic, which happens in business and society. And haven't worked out, to be honest, like how to articulate this, but I think co-working in my corner of the world is the best shot to deconstruct that.
It's your shot. Because churches are changing, it's everywhere. It's not just business. Churches are, the pews are bolted to the ground, all facing forward, waiting for the professionals to show up. This is, you walk in the door of a church to find God, and then you have to wait till the professional shows you how. Well, churches are getting rid of pews. They're creating sanctuaries and gathering places where people come to see each other, to find God in each other's eyes. So it doesn't matter what you're doing.
There's a church where I used to live in London, in Ilford. There's a church of an Anglican church, and much to the horror of some of the parishioners, Peter the priest arranged the pews in a circle. So there's these very, it must be like, I don't know if they are 100 years old, but they're meant to look like that, and they're in the circle in the middle. And then there's toys all the way around the outside, and it's such an inviting place. And I can imagine my grandmother would be devastated if she saw that, but
I don't care how people feel. Some people say this is not what I came for. I mean, it's not that I'm indifferent, but I don't want to be controlled by people who came to be passive. The issue is who will be accountable. The reason for the circle isn't just to feel welcome. It's also to say, so who will create what matters to us? And that's what the circle represents. And some people don't want that. And I say, fine, don't leave. But I don't want to create, you're trying to create an alternative experience for people. And even the ones that don't want it, if you welcome them, they get involved. And it's so simple, Bernie. That's what drives me crazy. It's, well, how do you do this? Fine. You put them in groups of 3 and you ask them certain questions. Like, why was it important for you to be here today? I don't need the priest or the vice president or a town meeting to tell me why I'm here. I need to tell you why it mattered to me. And I can ask them questions. What's the crossroads we're at as a congregation? What's the crossroads we're at as a co-work spacing? And these questions carry within them the experience of accountability. Because if I answer this question, I'm going to have to produce what matters to me. I'm not going to wait to see if it's given to me in the right way.
Where did you, I mean, it's really obvious now, but where did you get that small group thing from? Because that's something else that's given me confidence. Because years ago, I'd love to say, we've got 50 million people turning up to London Bloggers Meetup. We're the biggest global brand ever. And now now we're deliberately advocating for only 50 people come to our event, and even that's too many, because we want people to get their hands in the clay.
Yeah, the hands in the clay, I got it from Gestalt therapy. So when I was in my 20s and wondering whether I had a life and what was wrong with me and how could I fix that, I went to the thing and we sat in a circle, and the therapist had us talk to each other. And I said, wow, that was powerful. And I started doing trainings with groups of 12. And my children never knew what I did for a living, okay? I'm not even sure they were interested. But they were asked once, what does your father do? And their answer was, he breaks people into small groups.
Aww.
And I think that is a metaphor. That represents a way of thinking. So if there's 1,000 people in the room, that's fine. I'll break them into groups of 4. As soon as they get connected to 3 other people, they're connected to the other 996. There is a biology and a physiology to a room and to a community that we don't even know how to talk about. And I haven't found the language to do it very well, although I've tried. But every room has the possibility of being a place of connection. And whatever we came for, safety, legislation, decision-making, what to do with, is done better when I feel high trust and connection to who's ever in the room. And we can do it virtually. All of us had to go virtual. And now we do it, same thing virtually. We hold our meetings and break people into groups of 3, and they fall in love with each other in 12 minutes. And that's the possibility of the building and the architecture you have, which is quite communal. It's got windows. We can see each other. We know who's here, and we have rooms to gather in.
And what is one of the things? I've got all these ideas up here. I'm just got to hope the question arrives.
It's called talking, Bernie. You don't have to explain it.
So what I've been delighted to see as we've begun is,
and there's the examples all out there. There's a book called Pocket Neighborhoods by Ross Chapin, and he says, well, architecture matters, and so the spaces we have need to bring people in touch with each other and honor their privacy, and coffee shops aren't enough. It's we need to convene people, get in the habit of talking about things that matter to us, and coffee shops are a good vehicle for that. But in the normal course of doing what we do after the coffee, that's co-living and co-working. Co-working is how we are together. It's not just a space that we can share. And I think COVID kind of lifted the veil. We were isolated before. And now people say, well, we're not coming back into central London. They're not coming back for a reason. It's not convenience. It's because when they came there, what they went to didn't work that well. The office was a place for supervision and control. That's what they're not coming back to. So if we can create offices of connection, offices where people can be authentic with each other, trust each other, and create something together, that's the change we're looking for. And every little thing that supports that is valuable. Every time we gather, but too many times we gather people and we don't ask them questions that make a difference.
How do you get that initial, asking for a friend here, of course, but how do you get that initial first contact?
It's hard.
Me and my friend, it was Phil's business. He ran a co-working space in Euston in London, and we really wanted people. This is about 10 years ago. We really wanted people from the local area to come in, but a lot of people, like all the revenue came from people coming in because it was right by a mainline station in central London, super convenient. And we did have connections. If you ever watch Sherlock, the TV show, the cafe and where Sherlock Holmes lives was just next door. So it was really cool. And the only time we got to really engage with the local community is a politician called Joe, and it will come to in a second, basically got assassinated in Yorkshire. And then as a result of that, her husband and the Labour Party organised gatherings in her memory, and we organised a gathering. We were part of a group that organised a gathering in the street, and we got to meet everyone, and we had this art table up. But it took an event like that for us to get to meet people in the neighbourhood. And the only time I've ever been part of something that did this, we went on this. There's a place called Space 4 in Finsbury Park in London, and I went to a workshop about community. And as part of the workshop, we all ran co-working spaces. As part of the workshop, we had to go downstairs, speak to people in the street and talk to them about co-working. And none of us wanted to do it. And, the instructors made us do it and we got over it. But in less extreme examples than I've just mentioned there, how can we get those connections going?
Invite people to come to something that they care about, period. Is it safety? What are we doing in the parks? What about homeless people? Is it the economy? Is it raising our children? Is it the environment? All kinds of people care about the climate and the environment. Is it about the what do we do with disabled? People care about a finite number of things. So invite them about that. Don't invite them to co-work. Don't invite them to come together. Don't invite them to build a community. Invite them. And safety is a great one. Everybody, I don't know about in your world, in my world, everybody wants to talk about safety because we're marketing fear. That's what the United States' biggest product is fear. And so we hold safety meetings, but then when we come, we treat people as if they have the capacity to make us safe. And so I think to get people to come, invite them to something they already care about. And what you say is true. We're so habituated to treat the other and the stranger with some uneasiness that I have tried to launch inviting neighbors to gatherings for years and failed most of the time. And I don't really I struggle with that question. I'm working with a nature center here. It's got 18,000 members, big thing. And we did some trainings to say, would you just invite your neighbors to talk about the environment in your neighborhood? And most people said, I'm not comfortable doing that. So you almost have to find a way to seduce people into the room. And then it's complicated. It's hard. We're so isolated that we need an issue. And so what I'm doing now in my neighborhood is people are worried about the public parks and strangers living there, sleeping there. So we're gathering people to say, what can we do to welcome these people to our neighborhood? See, everybody wants to outsource what they care about. Let the corporations fix the climate. Let the police handle the homeless. And what co-working can do is invite people and say, well, what can we do to produce our own well-being? Maybe that's what co-working is really about. Co-working, co-living, cooperating, and creating our own well-being. I don't know. I don't have a real answer. Like, all I can do is talk about it without an answer. I'm good at that.
Well, saying it's really hard, that's a massive reward, because even at this stage of, whether it's like co-working or marketing or cooking, everyone else seems to have their shit together more than me. And to hear people say it like genuinely say it's hard.
It's hard. And I'm the expert. I wrote the book. It is hard. And we live in a world that breeds doubts in us by design. It's not an accident. And so that's why we need each other. For you to know there's nothing wrong with you, it's hard. And I can write all the books I want, but in my neighborhood of 8,500 people in Cincinnati, Ohio, when I try to and I was on council, okay? I ran for office. I got elected. And I said, can't we break the people that come to our meetings into small groups? They said, a good idea, Peter. You wrote the book on community. And then we get to the meeting and they didn't. And I said, what happened? Oh, we didn't have time. I failed miserably in changing the nature of meetings that I had some authorship of, in saying, if citizens are coming, why don't we treat them as co-creators? Let's break them into small groups and have them talk about the things we're talking about. And I failed. They wouldn't do it. If we had a meeting outside council, I could do it. There's a developer in town, wants to put 110 units down there, and everybody's mad at him. And I say, let's have a meeting. The developer said, come. And I ran the meeting, broke them into small groups. And by the end of the meeting, people said, good. I think we have a connection. The developer says, I hear what you're saying. And so the methodology works, but to get it into institutionalized places, it's enough.
So the last thing I want to jump on before we wrap up is that, could you explain to our listeners that point about how we create the world through language? Because that's something that's been really important in thinking about how I say stuff, instead of going like, let's hustle and grind. Yeah. It's
Well, you want speech acts that have power. Just to cut to the chase. My opinions, my complaints, my feedback have no power to create an alternative future. When I say, here's what I want, when I declare a possibility, when we say as we work, here's who we are and what we stand for, that's powerful. And so the key is and it's all about narrative. And we live within a narrative that's isolating, that's competitive. I go to school and I start competing. And so what WeWork can do is change the conversation into meetings and questions that give people the power and the accountability to create what they came for, not to wait for someone else to do it. And it's all through language. And it's not so much me as an individual, but I'm interested in Bernie, what's the most powerful thing you and I can talk about? And that conversation is about what we care about. It's about my contribution to the problem I came to complain about. Powerful question. Every time I'm in a group, I say, okay, you came because you're worried about safety. So what's your contribution to making your neighborhood not safe? If they can answer that question, the neighborhood becomes safer. Because I realize that my knowing and paying attention to the street. And so in every case, when people have powerful speech acts, which is what do I want? What do I declare? What do I want to say no to? What's the promise I'm willing to make? What's the gift I came to deliver? What doubts do I have? What's the yes I no longer mean? What's the no I've been postponing? Those conversations always take us somewhere.
That is always rattling in my head. What is the no I've been postponing? Crazy deep thing there. That's very useful. It's always like on there's a little side program running.
Once you do that, it won't let go of you. And sometimes people in the moment say, I don't have an answer to that question. I'm a guy who makes a commitment. What do you mean? What's the yes I no longer? I don't care what they say in the moment. It works on you. It eats away at you.
It does eat away with you. It's like, yeah. In a very healthy way. I don't want to put people off even activating that in their thing. So where is the best place to find you online and engage your work and change the universe and all that kind of stuff? designedlearning.com. Yep. We're going to put that in the show notes, folks. And is there some words of wisdom, Peter, before we head off into the sunset?
Well, that's my nugget, that I'm grateful to you. And you're a gift to me and to your audience. And that's the point. We're so focused on what more we should do. No, why don't we just see the gifts that we are to each other and just let that be always the way we close, is to say thank you. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your curiosity. Thank you for joining me in this interview. And it matters. And that's my thank you, period.
You're very welcome, and thank you too. And ladies and gentlemen, if you go to London Co-working Assembly or European Co-working Assembly or wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe and click and like and subscribe and all those things, you can listen to this and probably, I think it's about another 170 interviews with like-minded change makers from around the world. And thank you, listeners, for your time and attention today. Be careful out there. It is a jungle.